Thank you for being here. My name is Michele Levine. Before I dive in, I want to acknowledge someone, Dr. Ross Honeywell. He's with us tonight, and he'll be presenting the 2026 NEO Brand Awards straight after me. So you have something excellent to look forward to. Ross is a social scientist, and the work I'm about to share with you is built on his scholarship. He created the NEO population classification using data science, neuroscience, and behavioural science to identify a specific group of consumers whose behaviour consistently predicts where the rest of the market will go. He then partnered with Roy Morgan to identify them within the single source consumer database, which means we can measure them precisely, track them continuously, and map them to your industry. So what I have for you tonight is a glimpse into the FY27 Futurecast report. It's a forward view, 8 domains of consumer life, and what's shifting in each one right now. So let's begin. Here's the foundational idea. In any population, some people shape the future, not because they're richer or younger or more tech savvy, though those things correlate. They arrive first because of how they think, because of their mindset. Ross named them neo-consumers, short for the new economic order, or my preference, next economic order. And the research is unambiguous. What neos are doing right now, the broader mainstream market will be doing in 2 to 3 years. They are not a trend, they are a clock. And this report tells you what time it is. What makes this more than an interesting theory is the Roy Morgan partnership. Single Source is the largest continuous consumer tracking study in Australia, and NEOs are identified in it with precision. Now, before we get into the findings, let's be clear about why this matters commercially. Because occasionally someone will hear NEO and think niche, a subculture, interesting but peripheral. So let me give you the numbers. 24% of adult Australians have a NEO mindset. That's 5.5 million consumers. And that 5.5 million accounts for 90% of Roy Morgan's big spender category, the top third of elective spenders in the economy. So they're far from a niche. They are a new economy. And everything I'm about to tell you is where that economy is heading. What follows is where NEOs are heading across 8 domains of their lives. Everything from how they travel to how they power their homes, from how they shop to how they think about money. Tonight we're going deep on 4 of them: exploration, home and place, digital life, and mobility. These are the domains where the shifts are sharpest, the findings most counterintuitive, and the implications most urgent. We'll also cover luxury, shopping, money, and energy. The findings there are striking too. The full report has 5 futurecasts for each domain, but now in the name of brevity, I'll reveal 3 for the deep dive domains. Let's go. The travel industry has spent 30 years perfecting the art of the spectacular, the view, the experience, the moment worth photographing, and for 30 years that worked. But it's no longer working the way that it did. What NEOs are doing with travel is rewriting what premium travel means, not in 5 years, now. And the most striking thing about it is that the loudest, most visible, most Instagrammable experiences are the least interesting to NEOs. The fastest growing category in premium travel in 2026 is not adventure tourism, it's not expedition travel, it's not even wellness retreats in the conventional sense. It's recalibration, darkness retreats, controlled sensory environments, olfactory journeys, experiences specifically designed to heighten your perception rather than document it. And here's the detail that tells you everything. They are booking out months in advance at premium prices with, and this is the telling part, No social media post, no story, no proof of existence. The experience is entirely internal. The design brief that's working right now is not how do we create a moment worth sharing, it's how do we create a change worth making. There's a term circulating in premium travel circles that I think perfectly captures what's next. Immersion escapes. Ceramics in Portugal, traditional textile dyeing in Kyoto, full language immersion in rural Spain, no English spoken, not at the table, not at the bar, not in the street. These are not holidays with a bit of learning tacked on. The transformation is the product. You arrive as one person, you leave as another. More skilled, more fluent in a culture, more capable of something you couldn't do before. And the market is pricing this accordingly. The implication for anyone in the experience business, and that's most travel brands in one way or another, is that the question has changed. It used to be, what will they remember? It's now, what will they be able to do, think, or feel differently after they leave? If the answer is nothing, you're selling a very expensive right to forget. This one even surprised Ross and me. The travel itinerary to 7 countries in 3 weeks is losing ground in the most commercially valuable travel segment. Not because NEOs are travelling less, they're not. They're travelling differently. What's shaping the future is extended stays, a season in a Lisbon neighbourhood, 3 months in rural Japan watching the landscape change. Not a hotel, not a resort, something closer to living with a language, a community, a rhythm. The logic is perfectly NEO. You can't genuinely know a place in a week. Connection costs time, and NEOs are willing to pay for both. The new premium isn't more destinations, it's fewer, deep experiences. The brands winning this market are long-stay residences, curated apartments, and local landlord platforms that feel like belonging rather than visiting. It's a very different brief from equipping a room with high thread count sheets. If you want to understand how someone thinks about the future, look at what they're doing with their home. For NEOs, the home is not a dwelling. It's a life system. It generates energy, orchestrates deliveries, manages their later years, and reflects their values in ways that brands once thought only products could. And right now, it's being redesigned from the ground up. 3 things are happening simultaneously that, taken together, represent one of the most significant shifts in the residential property market in a generation. The front door is becoming logistics infrastructure. First, think about how you live. Groceries, prescriptions, wine, electronics, meals. For a growing proportion of NEO households, virtually everything is being delivered. The home has become the terminus of the delivery networks running simultaneously. And if you're an apartment dweller, the entry point, the lobby, the door, the threshold is being completely redesigned to accommodate it. Developers competing for NEO buyers are planning for parcel walls, refrigerated cabinets with keypads. They're competing on delivery architecture, the way they used to compete on kitchen finishes. Because for a buyer who lives this way, the question isn't just what's the kitchen like, it's what happens when I'm not home. The house is becoming a product, not a project. Bespoke home construction is often too slow for future-shaping NEOs. Developer specs are too generic. NEOs have arrived at a third option. Think about configuring a car. You choose the preferred design, you select the interior package, you see the total cost before anything's built, you sign, and a known timeline begins. It's finite, curated, and transparent. No exhausting renegotiation with the builder, no surprise costs at lockup, no anxious uncertainty about when to book the removalists. Smart builders are offering modular choices, prefabrication, fixed timelines, architect-designed homes, and transparent all-in pricing. Not because NEOs can't afford bespoke, but because bespoke asks you to carry the cognitive weight of a complex, uncertain, years-long project. And NEOs are very good at calculating the value of their time and mental energy. The fastest growing premium housing category is designed by people who never plan to feel old. As the population ages, one emerging segment of the premium residential property market is later living, co-designed by the people who will inhabit it. NEOs approaching their 60s and 70s are not choosing retirement villages. They're not choosing traditional assisted living. They're not downsizing to a smaller version of what they already have. They're rejecting the entire existing model and demanding something new. An architect-designed, community-led, independent living ecosystem. Concierge infrastructure, outsourced services, meaningful shared spaces, not a beige carpet in sight. The design brief, as one of our developer clients put it, is not how do we accommodate decline, it's how do we architect a third act. And NEOs aren't waiting for conventional developers to catch up. They're self-organising, co-purchasing land, commissioning architects, forming intentional communities with sophisticated governance structures and shared infrastructure. What I'm about to share under this domain is, I think, the most commercially interesting section of everything we're discovering tonight. The shift happening in digital life isn't about which apps NEOs use or how much screen time they use. It's structural. There is a new architecture sitting between NEOs and the brands they want to reach them. And most brands haven't even noticed it's there. Here's something your digital team needs to hear, because it fundamentally changes the brief. In financial year 27, AI agents have moved from assistant to buyer. NEOs are outsourcing an expanding set of decisions to those agents. Travel bookings, product comparisons, subscription management, grocery replenishment. The agent doesn't browse. It doesn't browse the way a human does. It queries. It evaluates against preset criteria, and in many cases, it purchases without the human being involved in the transaction at all. What that means for your brand is this. The agent screens your offer before the NEO ever sees it. If your pricing structure is ambiguous, if your product specifications aren't clearly structured, if there's friction anywhere in the customer journey, you are not rejected, you are invisible. The agent simply moves on to the next option, and your brand never even enters the consideration set. The front door of your brand used to be a beautiful landing page, a compelling hero image, a clever headline. Now it's a machine-readable data structure that an algorithm parses in milliseconds. This is not a future consideration for your 2028 roadmap. This is the current buying reality for the most commercially valuable consumer mindset in the Australian market. Here's a counterintuitive truth about tech early adopters. NEOs have become deeply selective about the private information their technology collects and shares. On-device AI, models that run locally, that process nothing in the cloud, that share nothing with third parties, is emerging as a premium product categories that NEOs are looking for. They are paying Claude for it, not because they've turned against technology, but because they want a ring-fenced data relationship. They want to know what their devices know, who else knows it, and how they can revoke permissions instantly. And here's the paradox that brands need to understand. NEOs share more with the brands they trust. They share more willingly, more usefully. But according to the Roy Morgan Risk Lab, they trust fewer brands than ever before. The ones they do trust are those who made the relationship transparent. Not through a privacy policy that no one reads, but through product design that puts control in plain sight. This one is about how NEOs think now, not just what they buy, what their entire orientation towards effort and time. The mental model has fundamentally shifted, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. NEOs no longer do the task. They assign the task, and they receive it back completed. Bookings, research, document preparation, background monitoring jobs that run until a job's finished, all of it delegated out, processed in the background, returned for a final human yes or no. And here's the nuance. Because this is sometimes misread, the point is not to hand over judgment. NEOs are not abdicating decisions. They're eliminating the grind that precedes the decision. The searching, the comparing, the form filling, the waiting, while keeping their expectations entirely intact. The automotive industry has had 20 years to see this coming, and most brands still haven't. The relationship between NEOs and vehicles is changing faster and more fundamentally than at any point since the car was invented. Ownership, driving, range anxiety, fuel costs, the entire framework is being renegotiated. What's emerging in its place is both more interesting and more commercially complex than the simple electric car story most brands are telling. And this is not a novelty story. When NEOs, who have used robo-taxis in San Francisco and Phoenix in the first Australian trials, describe what happens to their relationship with personal driving, the words that come up repeatedly are before and after. They're not interesting or convenient. It's a mental restructuring. The recalculation happens immediately and is both emotional and rational. You're sitting in traffic. You're managing a 2-ton machine. You're watching the road. Every second your brain is making dozens of micro judgments. And the question that forms is, why am I doing this? If the machine can manage itself, become driverless, why am I managing it? And that question doesn't fade. It grows. Most automobile brands are still investing in steering wheel heritage. The brands that win mobility beyond 2027 will be experienced designers, not engineers. When we started on the report, this looked like an energy story. It's actually a mobility story, a property story, and an energy story simultaneously. And that's precisely what makes it so significant in the mobility domain. NEOs with a rooftop solar, a home battery, and an EV are not just reducing their energy costs. They are operating what amounts to a small energy business from their driveway. They're harvesting energy from the sun, storing it in their battery wall, drawing on it overnight, and through vehicle-to-grid technology, exporting stored energy back to the home and to the grid during peak demand. So this is not a regular energy story, it's an automotive story. The car that used to cost them money even when it sat in the garage is now generating revenue every day it sits in the driveway. The NEO's home, car and grid are becoming a single orchestrated system. The winner will not be whoever has the best individual product. It will be whoever makes the whole system work together. And here's something that should interest anyone in this room who runs a workplace, a property, or a city with daily touch points. NEOs are tired of managing their movement across 5 separate apps. What they want, and what's emerging to meet them, is a single membership that handles everything: public transport, ride share, car share, automated around their real routines. One tap to adjust. The commercial insight is clear. Whoever owns the pass owns frequency. They become the default decision layer for how their customers move through the week, every day. And the organisations best placed to own it aren't transport companies. They're employers and local councils, because they can negotiate at scale and wrap it into something people already value. Now let's run quickly through the other 4 domains. First, I'll say something about luxury that I think is important. The luxury market remains robust despite cost of living crisis. but the basis on which it charges a premium price is being restructured. For decades, the price premium rested on heritage and provenance, the founding story, the famous name, the association with a particular set of values that the brand claimed through its advertising. But NEOs no longer accept the traditional proposition. They want proof, visible craft, traceable materials, transparent supply chains, relevance. They want the ability to see where something was made, by whom, and with what. We call this supported ownership, the knowledge that the brand stands behind the beautiful thing that you've bought for the long term. The beautifully designed flagship retail store is simultaneously the brand and the immersive studio. Sensory, live. It's not a place to hold stock, it's a place to hold attention. The brands winning at the flagship end are treating it like a media channel. Events, experiences, things that happen there that can't happen anywhere else. At the other end is the micro store, winning on the opposite logic: proximity, certainty, and readiness. It knows what you need, it's close to where you are, and it makes the transaction frictionless. Beyond 2027, anything between will struggle. And at both ends of the retail spectrum, NEOs are demanding control upfront, the ability to try at home before committing, to reserve without purchasing, to test in smaller quantities before going all in. The loyalty model that sustained retail banking for decades is dissolving fast because the thing that sustained it, managing friction, has been almost entirely removed. AI is comparing rates, flagging fee anomalies, reviewing savings in real time, but the more revealing shift is in what NEOs expect next. Automation that acts on their behalf and stops the moment they say stop. Not a black box, a capable assistant with a visible override. NEOs switch to your competitor when the logic says switch, not out of disloyalty, out of a desire to get the optimal result by using the best information. The institutions succeeding make control a design feature rather than a retention tactic. That's the new loyalty. And a brand confident enough to let you leave is paradoxically more trustworthy than one that traps you. Australia's energy system is undergoing the second great transformation, and NEOs are leading it. We've heard all about rooftop solar, batteries and EVs, but here's where this story ends up, and it's extraordinary. The single biggest pressure on energy systems right now isn't households, it's AI. Data centres are running into hard walls, cost, physical space, community resistance, and the sheer volume of cooling capacity required. And for cooling capacity, read precious water. The solution being explored at the frontier is not building more data centres, it's taking computation off the planet entirely. SpaceX has filed with US regulators for approval to operate an orbital data centre, a solar-powered computing system running in continuous sunlight, drawing no power from the Earth's grid. The application covers up to 1 million satellites. That's not a consumer story for tomorrow, but it is the sharpest possible example of where NEO thinking is leading us. The constraint, the obstacle, decides where the future gets to live. So now we've moved through 8 domains, and I want to pull back for a moment because there's a pattern running through all of them that I think is the most important thing I can leave you with. It's not a sector-specific insight, it's a fundamental shift in the consumer relationship itself. The passive consumer is becoming a thing of the past. Across every single domain we track: travel, home, digital life, mobility, luxury, shopping, finance, energy. NEOs are taking the reins, designing their own systems, seeking proof for any price premium, and going only where the customer journey is frictionless. So to conclude, everything I've shown you tonight is already happening. It's not on the horizon. It's not a prediction. NEOs are living it right now, and the mainstream will follow in 2 to 3 years. That's what the Futurecast is. Not a prediction, evidence, behaviour that's already underway in the most commercially valuable segment of the economy, tracked continuously so that the brands paying attention can move before the shift becomes obvious to everyone. So, identify your NEOs, align to what they actually value, build an evidence or proof layer, and measure them separately because they tell you what's coming before it shows up anywhere else. And who better than Roy Morgan to help you get there first?